By the turn of the millennium, African leaders had articulated a bold vision for the continent's political, economic, social, developmental and cultural revival. They realized that Africa's new integration processes needed strong institutions, good planning, implementation processes. Hello and welcome to the program. I am Daniel Makokera, and this is the story of that journey. A palpable air of excitement, the flagship development program of the African Union is born, signed into life by 20 leaders on the continent. A game changer, the first of its kind, NEPAD, or the New Partnership for Africa's Development, is a story of big ideals and lofty ambitions. A story of reinvention and transformation. A story of progress.
There is a striking fact in the genesis of NEPAD. And that striking fact is the combined genius of Thabo Mbeki, Olusegun Obasanjo and Abdoulaye Wade, whom I qualify as critical leaders in the thinking that helped shape Africa's development in the last 60 years.
The 5 founding member states of NEPAD were Algeria, Egypt, Nigeria, Senegal, and South Africa.
The question that really bothered them is that why should we be in a situation where we are requesting aid? We have been exploited for 400 years. We still are being exploited. The density of our natural resources, the youth of our population are very strong comparative advantage. So why are we in a situation where we need to request aid and we reproduce that kind of partnership, which my words are very strong, but which is a kind of master-slave relationship? Why should we be in that thinking?
Pan-Africanists argued that Africa could only be strong and take its place among the world's economic and political powers if it was united. An Africa divided into more than 50 countries was destined to be politically and economically weak.
The one thing that united, that genuinely united the continent, was the struggle for the total liberation of the continent. Its area of focus was, let's end this colonialism and apartheid and all that. I'm saying practically this is what united the continent. That leadership also recognized that apart from these issues of colonial and racist oppression, there was challenge of poverty and underdevelopment. And therefore, let this be the new area of focus. Hence, let us look at what needs to be done with regard to that particular issue, the eradication of poverty and underdevelopment. That's how NEPAD was born.
That new partnership was based on 2 fundamental principles.
The first pillar is that we need to own the narrative of our development. So we need to design a program which respect the values that we want to enhance. And the second pillar was about governance. If we can fix the issues of bad governance, the issues of inequality, the issue of adapted public policies, then we can lay the foundations of a development that we own. Fundamentally, NEPAD is about dignity.
Les défis de l'Afrique sont des défis multiples. Tout est urgent. Il y a énormément de difficultés. L'un des défis majeurs quand même pour le développement de l'Afrique, c'est le déficit d'infrastructures. Si l'on considère déjà le commerce intra-africain, il est très faible, environ 11%, parce qu'il n'y a pas de liaison entre pays africains. Il est beaucoup plus facile de quitter un pays africain, d'aller en Europe, et de l'Europe aller vers l'autre pays africain, que de faire la liaison directement au sein du continent. Les marchandises connaissent les mêmes difficultés puisque nous ne sommes pas interconnectés par le chemin de fer. Les routes transnationales ne sont pas toujours en bon état et aussi les barrières font que le commerce intra-africain connaît beaucoup de difficultés.
For me, if you look at the history of the last 60 plus years, there is that moment where the founding fathers of the OAU decided to build together a platform in order to fight for political liberation. And there is that moment at the beginning of 2000 where three leaders with a clear genius decide to cut the ties of an old partnership in order to move to a new one, but with a sense of ownership and a strong governance system.
At the 2001 OAU Summit meeting of African presidents in Libya, the leaders committed themselves to the idea of developing an African Union to replace the OAU. As envisioned, the African Union would have some resemblance to the European Union, but it would reflect the needs and realities of Africa.
It's not a coincidence that it happened just before the creation of the African Union. When they design NEPAD as a program, they give it to the African Union as a development program. Because remember, the shift between the OAU and the AU was a shift in terms of paradigm. We should move from political liberation to economic liberation.
NEPAD was a plan to address tough economic challenges on the continent, a blueprint for regeneration. It was originally a combination of earlier initiatives. The Millennium Africa Recovery Plan, backed by South African President Thabo Mbeki and Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo, and the Omega Plan from Senegalese President Abdoulaye Wade.
So from the start, the perspective of integrating the Secretariat institutionally into the African Union was given as a priority. So it took several years between 2003 and 2010 to finalize the first step of that integration.
The continent is losing billions of capital that it needs for its development, which it can stop. But I don't think enough is being done about it. So I'm saying, you see, the capacity, when we established NEPAD, the capacity, indigenous capacity to implement the agreed program was very weak.
In the early days, NEPAD faced formidable challenges. It had to make new partnerships, dismantle trade barriers, deal with political dictatorships, and find ways to develop and diversify industries.
You cannot imagine the headaches. We just had to behave with necessary humility, avoid arrogance, and show that we could add value to what the Commission was doing. We had to go through the corridors and arrange chairs and tables and see how we could work. I knew that we would move from competition to cooperation. And today, our level of consideration and credibility within the AU is the proof that we had the right attitude.
As NEPAD becomes fully integrated into AU structures and processes, it changes from a secretariat to an agency. It wasn't just a name change. It was a way to improve delivery.
We had to be seen in the African Union setting. And then we could reinforce that interaction with the departments of the Commission, departments of infrastructure, agriculture, science and technology, social affairs, political affairs, peace and security, we could start to work because we were within the family. So we moved from a competition mindset to a cooperation mindset.
NEPAD was often viewed as the baby with the African Union as its mother. The problem was, the African Union was increasingly being viewed as an inefficient bureaucracy with poor implementation, funding shortages, and overlapping rivalries. In January 2018, Rwandan President Paul Kagame was elected as the chairperson of the African Union. He was tasked with pushing through reform processes and had already spent 2 years working on a plan.
In 2016 in Kigali, African heads of states are questioning the efficacy of a union. And they establish, define, and a diagnosis which is fundamentally reflected by a sense of frustration regarding the speed at which we attain our objectives of integration.
The Kagame report was a blueprint for change, with 3 major reforms: to speak with one voice, to rationalize what is and isn't working.
And the third aspect, objective of the reform, is how can we divide labor amongst all the entities of the union so that we can better work together.
Kagame was the driving force behind the reform process of the AU and also initiated a historic agreement about free trade in Africa.
NEPAD's mission was to eradicate poverty and integrate Africa into the global economy with a focus on good governance.
During the Nouakchott meeting in 2018, a decision was taken which would transform NEPAD into AUDA-NEPAD, the African Union Development Agency. It was established as the technical body of the African Union, with its own legal identity, a first of its kind. It was part of several institutional and financial reforms officially launched at the 2019 AU Summit. Dr. Mayaki was instrumental in advocating for the need to accelerate the implementation of development projects. He believed AUDA-NEPAD was a critical link connecting the African Union Commission, regional economic communities, and member states by playing a strategic development role and providing a clear division of labor. He also spoke out for stronger leadership.
African leaders should not have the luxury of sitting in capitals with authority and power and waiting for things to happen on the ground. They have to be on the ground. And that's the sacrifice they need to do if we want that transformation to happen.
La prospérité du continent, c'est ce que nous recherchons au quotidien dans chacun de nos États. C'est ce que aussi l'Union africaine a formulé dans sa vision 2063, l'Afrique que nous voulons. Et pour arriver à cette Afrique que nous voulons, il y a des étapes. Le NEPAD nous a donné vraiment des voies certaines. Si nous les suivons, nous arriverons à cette Afrique que nous voulons. En termes de connectivité sur le continent, en termes également de connexion sur les voies de communication, route rail, connexion aérienne, portuaire. Et c'est ça qui va développer le commerce intra-africain. Nous venons de lancer la zone de libre-échange continentale, la SLECAF. Celle-ci ne pourra avoir de sens que lorsque nous commercerons, surtout entre nous. Si nous n'avons pas les voies, les routes, les chemins de fer pour commercer, la SLECAF sera un vœu pieux. Donc il faut développer l'infrastructure dans le continent. Il faut développer l'agriculture. Et là, on revient aux 2 programmes phares du NEPAD.
Rebirthed, bigger, better, and now, with more clarity on its specific role within the African Union, AUDA-NEPAD forges ahead. The AUDA-NEPAD implements its mandate through 6 broad thematic areas. These are knowledge management, human capital and institutions development, technology, innovation and digitization, industrialization, environmental sustainability, finally, economic integration.
These thematic areas translate into a number of flagship and priority projects that contribute to the AU agenda for sustainable growth and socio-economic development.
The 100,000 MSMEs initiative is a fit-for-purpose flagship program with services designed to build the capacity of MSMEs and to improve their access to finance and new markets. Over 18,000 MSMEs in 33 member states have been trained so far, and a funding window for 1,600 MSMEs in 8 countries has already been made available.
The COVID-19 crisis has laid bare many of the structural, socio-economic vulnerabilities and weaknesses in Africa, such as poverty and inequality. The African Union Development Agency-NEPAD undertook rapid interventions geared at improving access to sustainable and resilient health services, ensuring food and nutrition security, and developing internal markets while strengthening the protection of Africa's economic foundations. To this end, the African Union Development Agency-NEPAD worked directly with the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to provide field support using its network and to coordinate meetings and trainings of mainly medical personnel.
The objective of the African Medicines Regulatory Harmonization Initiative, AMRH, is to ensure that African people have access to good quality, safe, efficacious, and effective essential medical products and technologies. The AMRH initiative started in 2009 to address the fragmented regulatory systems on the African continent and to provide an optimal environment for local production of medical products and health technologies on the continent. For over a decade now, the continent has witnessed significant progress in harmonization of technical requirements for registration of medical products and good manufacturing practice, with subsequent reduction of timelines for marketing authorization. 17 African Union member states have domesticated the AU model law on medical products regulation so far. 11 regional centers of regulatory excellence have been designated to provide sustainable mechanisms for production of regulatory workforce in Africa. The AUDA-NEPAD is now working with African Union Commission and WHO to establish the African Medicines Agency.
It is increasingly obvious that global climate is warming faster than earlier estimated, with widespread effect for agriculture, energy, health, marine ecosystems, water resources, and some industries across the world, and especially in Africa. The African Forest Landscape Restoration Initiative, AFR 100, is a country-led effort to bring 100 million hectares of degraded land and forests into restoration in Africa by 2030. In this way, AUDA-NEPAD is providing a direct response to strengthening climate change resilience, enhancing food security, and combating rural poverty.
There was this need now to amalgamate all these plans and all these new thinking and initiatives around infrastructure and come up with the Program for Infrastructure Development in Africa, PIDA. So that was the basis. So it was supposed to be this program, or it is the program that it's meant to be, to transform this continent and integrate us. I think Kazungula is a living example. Namibia, Botswana, Zambia, Zimbabwe. As you know, there was a ferry service that used to go up and down. And now you have 2 border posts. You clear at one border post, you can smoothly drive through another country. Not to mention the delays in cargo, and just a huge improvement in the value chain.
Working closely with both the public and private sectors, regional integration across the continent is in full swing. It's not just a bridge, but a lifeline, a physical example of the African Continental Free Trade Area. The bridge highlights the team building, regional cooperation, and democratic values that are the calling card of all AUDA-NEPAD projects.
By 2013-2014, we had about 433 projects distilled from 51 programs. That took a while. Yeah. And remember, as I said, there were plans, programs, all lumped in, and now we had to segment it. Which projects are energy related, which ones are transport in terms of air transport, road transport, rail transport, which ones are water related, which ones are ICT related. So we took a set of projects to the Dakar Financing Summit as a test case. And out of those projects, of course, we did a lot thereafter. If you look at the Abidjan-Lagos corridor, that was part of the projects that we took to the Dakar Financing Summit. The work we did in East Africa, LAPSET came later. The Lamo port, that was one of the, that was a spin-off from the Dakar Financing Summit. And also, now that we're talking about this continental master plan, this transmission master plan, that of course built up on the energy projects. In 2017, Dr. Mayaki for the first time went to see the bridge.
It took a bit of time to actually move away from very traditional donor projects into recognizing that this was about transforming our economic systems. So in CADAP, we then worked as part of NEPAD to actually support the countries. So it comes up very much building on the instruments, on the philosophy, on the energy that NEPAD had meant to deliver, and therefore extremely integral, and very much, in fact, you cannot talk about the NEPAD vision in terms of economic growth, in terms of job creation, in terms of human well-being, without connecting to agriculture and the other way around. That's why actually leading into the what is now called the Malabo decision in 2014, which was actually the renewal of the CADAP decision, there was now very clear and firm targets that had to be met. This all came from the fact that countries had now engaged, they recognized the value, they understood the bigger picture, and actually things were roaring in terms of bringing agriculture. And this is what we saw. In fact, one of the results is that agriculture was firmly back on the priority list in development aid, development financing, and in national development plans.
Staying with agriculture, a major player but often the missing link in agricultural transformation in Africa is the private sector. Dr. Mayaki's tenure witnessed the founding of the Grow Africa program, a vehicle for strengthening private sector participation.
You see, for the longest time, I mean, if we talk about agriculture transformation, we've always looked up to public sector or to governments to create jobs, to attain food security. It's become increasingly known that governments are struggling, that they cannot do this on their own. Hence the need to work with private sector.
Grow Africa, which is hosted by AUDA-NEPAD, has emerged as a proven model for public-private sector collaboration at the national and continental level. It has helped generate a private sector investment commitment to agriculture of over 10 billion United States dollars, benefiting more than 10 million smallholder farmers and creating over 88,000 jobs.
We've seen things happening in Uganda, in Malawi recently. Last year, Grow Africa was able to sign these term sheets, an estimate over 250 million US dollars in terms of term sheet commitments, which we are now actively converting. This year in 2020, again, been able to mobilize up to over 220 million US dollar in terms of investments coming in from private sector.
These are a few of the flagship projects AUDA-NEPAD is implementing in more than 50 countries where we have a footprint.
Most recently, Dr. Mayaki and his teams have been instrumental in fast-tracking the implementation of other major continental development projects such as Agenda 2063 and the SDGs. Agenda 2063 is Africa's blueprint for transforming the continent into a global powerhouse. Agenda 2063 is a concrete plan to achieve this vision within a 50-year period from 2013 to 2063. It is the strategic framework for delivering on Africa's goal for inclusive and sustainable development, and it is a concrete manifestation of Pan-African drive for unity, self-determination, freedom, progress, and collective prosperity pursued under Pan-Africanism and African Renaissance.
In the next 10 years, 90% of the current heads of states in the continent will no longer be heads of states. So you will have a change of leadership. So if there is one thing you can do, is please invest yourself in making sure that the upcoming leadership is a transformative one and allows Africa to implement Agenda 2063.
But the agency has done more than just projects. Under Dr. Mayaki's leadership, it has influenced policy.
The overstrength is that we have reached a degree of cooperation with the African Union Commission, where today we are recognized as an efficient institution which can deliver with integrity and accountability. Accountability is really one of our big comparative advantages.
He says the key is having good people to work with.
The first is that I can't hide the fact that I'm proud to have led the Secretariat to the African Union Development Agency. In terms of strength, I think we have a highly dedicated staff. Many of the colleagues that are here could be working the World Bank, IMF, FAO, but they have somehow a sense of wanting to work for the continent. And you should never take for granted that.
He leaves behind a string of success stories, some large, some less visible, but all aiming to showcase the story of Africa's vision, a prosperous, united, and peaceful Africa, driven by its own people and a significant player on the world stage. A united and peaceful Africa run by Africans for Africa. As Dr. Mayaki prepares to hand over the baton to his successor, one is comforted with the fact that a good foundation has been laid here for generations to come in integrating our continent. I'm Daniel Makokera. Thank you for watching.